Steve is calling from Minneapolis. Hello, Steve.
First of all, let me just say I really appreciate this show, and I've been listening for a couple months now, and I grew up Protestant, but I tell you, I'm really warming up to Catholicism. God's doing some, I don't know, strange things in my life through the station.
Wow.
And I even started listening to some Scott Hahn stuff on YouTube, and boy, that'll challenge you. I really think you're a thoughtful, balanced person when it comes to looking at any issue. Can you explain to me in a nutshell this concept of purgatory and how that affects people that are, I mean, is that just for the Catholic people, or is that, I mean, how does that work?
Yeah. Hey, just for us, and everybody else has to, they get to just get right in. No, Steve, first of all, thank you for calling. Thank you for listening. I love it when non-Catholics, non-Christians listen to the program, and when they call in, I'm so glad. The other day, somebody who was an atheist called in and had a great conversation, and I'm just going to ask everybody listening to pray for you, Steve, on your spiritual journey, that you might receive light as you're searching. And I think it's awesome that you called in, and thank you for your very kind words. I'm really humbled by that. And let me try to answer your question about purgatory, because it's a question that really, I didn't see that coming up in the survey about what Americans think about the afterlife. But let me just I'll tell you what the Catechism says about it, and I'll tell you where you can find it in the Bible, and maybe try to shed a little bit of light on it. So, the Catechism says about purgatory, and this is from the Catechism is organized by paragraphs. So sometimes you'll see it in print as CCC 1030, CCC 1031. Those are paragraph numbers. So those are two paragraphs that talk a little bit about purgatory, and it says, "All who die in God's grace and friendship, but still imperfectly purified, are indeed assured of their eternal salvation. But after death, they undergo purification so as to achieve the holiness necessary to enter the joy of heaven." So there's in the book of Hebrews, it says that without holiness, no one will see the Lord. And I think that even for those of us who are in a state of grace, our souls are pretty clean. We still have, a little bit of dust in the corner. I like to call purgatory the mudroom of heaven. Some of us have a mudroom in our house where we kind of just knock off the crud from the outdoors before we can come in to the family room, if you will. And so that's a little bit like purgatory. Now, one thing purgatory is definitely not. It's not a second chance for those who are condemned to hell after death. There's no getting out. The Catechism talks about that as well. In paragraph 1031, it says that the final purification of the elect is entirely different from the punishment of the damned. And so now it's true that you won't find the word purgatory anywhere in the Bible, but that doesn't mean that the concept is not there. The word Trinity is not in the Scriptures either, but God is a Trinity. And I think that doctrine is in the Scriptures as well, implicitly at least. So the question really is the concept of purgatory scriptural? In the Old Testament, in the books of the Maccabees, and I know, Steve, that a lot of Protestants don't view those books as Scripture, but it does tell us, at least, even if you don't think they're Scripture, we think they are Scripture, it does tell us what Jews at that time, and this is around the time of Christ himself, thought about the afterlife. And here's what it says about Judas Maccabeus. It says, "For if he was not expecting that those who had fallen would rise again, it would have been superfluous and foolish to pray for the dead. But it was a holy and pious thought. Therefore he made atonement for the dead that they might be delivered from their sin." So he was praying for some guys who had done a terrible thing before they died. He was praying for the repose of their souls, essentially. This is in 2 Maccabees chapter 12. You can read about it. Now, it's not necessary to pray for people already in heaven. They don't need our prayers. People in hell, right. No prayer can get us out of there. If you're in there, you can't be extracted.
Okay.
Jesus talks about that in Luke chapter 16, the parable of the rich man and Lazarus. So there's got to be an intermediate state where those who are destined for heaven, everybody who's in purgatory is going to heaven. They just need to get cleaned up a little bit. That's what we talk about. We talk about it as a place sometimes, and maybe that's just a way of speaking about it. This purification that needs to be undergone before we can stand in the presence of a holy God. We can also talk about Matthew 12:32. Jesus talks about a sin that will not be forgiven either in this age or in the age to come. This kind of implies that some temporal punishment due to sin can be somehow expiated after death. And then the other one is 1 Corinthians 3:15, where St. Paul talks about people's work being tested by God in the day of judgment. And he talks about individuals whose work is kind of found wanting or not up to par. He says he will suffer loss, though he himself will be saved, but only as through fire. Now, nobody can suffer loss in heaven. Nobody suffers at all in heaven, but so it can't refer to hell either because the person is saved in the end. So this seems to do with a purifying state. And so just a couple of quick things there from Scripture, and we're kind of running out of time here, Steve. I wish we had more
Right.
time,
Sure.
but hopefully this helps a little bit for you.
Absolutely. No, it's added to the tug in my heart toward these things because I guess I've been pleasantly surprised at Catholicism as I'm listening and from the theology that I hear, but also just the hearts of the people, the answers to prayer. It's just there's a lot that I'm rethinking, and I'm not sure where I'm going to land on it, but I do
Yep.
appreciate your prayers. I really do.
Steve, I appreciate you. I appreciate your honesty, your willingness to look into it, your openness, and I'll certainly keep you in prayer for sure. And you can call back anytime, Steve. You're always welcome here. And I want to wish you and yours a
Thank you.
very, very Merry Christmas.